Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher of Multi-World Disc Golf, Charlie Eisenhood, and joining me for the third and unfortunately final week, but it's been an excellent run here over the 3 weeks, is multi-time world champion Juliana Korver. Juliana, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
So I know you were out at the Memorial. You got some sunshine down in Arizona. Sounds like the best thing in the world to me right now. How was it? How was your experience?
It was so different. I mean, I've played literally hundreds of tournaments in my career, and this one was unique. Now, granted, I haven't played an event since the COVID shutdowns last year, so this was my first time seeing all of the restrictions. And I got to tell you, one of my favorite ones, playing in the desert at this time of year, every single year I have come away with chapped lips, burned around, like my lips are burned, my upper lip is burned. The mask is beautiful for this because it saves your skin from the harsh sun, and I always seem to forget just how much the sun affects you at the beginning of the year. So right. That part was a benefit in my opinion, but there were so many other things that were just strange. Not having a lot of people around, particularly players after they're finished or before they start. Not being able to stay and watch other rounds. It felt a little otherworldly. Yeah. So it's not like we were the only ones on the course because it's a public facility. And so, right. Of course, there are people walking around and, you can sort of get by some of the restrictions by staying on the sidewalk and not going on the fairways. So some people did follow along, but they were very respectful of the rules and everything. It was just a much more subdued, somber environment.
Do you think there was any impact from this not being on the Elite Series for the first time since the start of the national tour?
Yes, I think the impact was that some of the top players chose not to play this event.
Sure.
I don't think that the people who did play the event felt like this was anything less than it has been in the past. In fact, I can't compare other divisions across the timeline, but for my division, the entry or the payout was higher and not just trivially. So, it felt like everything went into it just as it would have had it been associated with the Just Golf Pro Tour, with the exception, of course, of massive camera followings. Right. We still had Terry was out there and
shout out to the disc golf
did
guy.
Double time for sure. So there was still some access to play, but maybe it shifts and fewer top players go to this event. But as far as the other age protected divisions, this is still a very big draw.
Right. I remember when I talked to the tournament director back in the fall, when it was announced that it wasn't going to be on the Pro Tour in 2021, one of the things that was pointed out was that this would allow for more age-protected division opportunities, more amateur opportunities. And, I think as much as we focus on this podcast and the media generally focuses on the elite events, those are still important tent poles of disc golf to have big AM-focused events and events that have just a lot of participants in general. So I think, it felt like it was time for this one to leave the Elite Series, just in my mind, given the sort of the style of the courses, not feeling like it's really up to the standard of kind of touring professionals at this point in 2021. But I'm glad to see that it still looked like it was a successful overall event. And it's not like there weren't good players there. I mean, Owen Scoggins wins an FPO, had an amazing 1030 plus rated round. And Paul McBeth wins another Memorial and back on top at a tournament that he really dominated for many years in the 2010s.
Yeah, this tournament, it felt like it was right where it needs to be, and it's never going to lack for people who want to play. There were people on the waiting list for almost every division coming down to the last day. So this tournament is here to stay, and
Yeah.
sure, it's no longer on the Elite Series, but I think that's just fine. The tournament is still historically holds a special place for a lot of people, including myself.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, by the way, on winning your division.
Thank you.
Is it FP40?
Yes, I played in the FP40. Yes.
You dominated. So, I mean, I would expect nothing less, but we'll get to some of your own personal thoughts on various elements of disc golf and disc sports in general in a segment a little bit later. We asked listeners to hashtag Ask Juliana, and they've got a bunch of questions for you about your thoughts on the history of disc golf, the future of disc golf. So I'll ask you those on behalf of the listeners in a little bit. We actually have a pretty busy show today, all things considered, even though we didn't have like an Elite Series tournament this weekend. I mean, I guess really quick before we move on from the Memorial, just any thoughts on McBeth and Scoggins taking down wins this weekend?
McBeth was no surprise. He, has done extremely well this event, as you mentioned, in the past. And I truly think that whenever he comes away from an event feeling like he didn't play his best, he puts in an extra effort, which is scary because his effort is already almost more than anyone else's, if not more than anyone else's. So I was expecting Paul to win this event with a strong showing for sure. Own, it's so great to see her at the top. She's, as everyone knows, such a great putter. But she's also got both sidearm and backhand, which can be a benefit, especially at Fountain when there are angles that you have to contend with near the water. It was just a matter of time before she won a big event against, not the best that's out there, but Haley. Yeah. Haley is right on her tail. Valerie put up some really good rounds. So I really hope that this gives Own the confidence that she can take down any event that she plays if she plays her best.
Yeah, I mean, and she had a spectacular third round that put her in a position to hold off Haley King in the final round. Got a little close there at the end, but congrats to her. Today was the ratings update. So, I mean, sometimes there's some news. This was especially newsy because even though you got McBeth coming off this win at the Memorial, and it should be noted that the Memorial results were not factored into this ratings update. Paul McBeth is now only the fourth highest rated player in the world. And when Ricky took over the top spot at the end of 2020, that was the first time in 8 years that McBeth hadn't been at least in a share of the number one rated player in the world. And now he's down to number 4. For the first time in his career, Eagle McMahon is the lone leader in the rating department at 1056. He's ahead of Calvin Heimberg at 1054, Ricky Wysocki at 1053, and McBeth at 1051. And, given the strong start that we saw from Eagle with a big win at Vegas, it's not a huge surprise. I mean, those names right at the top are all tremendous players. And, rating's not the end all be all, but I still think it's pretty notable to see, reflected in the algorithmic math of the ratings that Eagle McMahon is, snapshot right now today, the top player in the world. That feels right to me.
I think this is big for Eagle. I think this is, a moment he's going to remember. But as far as Ricky and Paul and Calvin, it's sorry, but it's, it's close to a rounding error when that number is so high. They're all so close that, yeah, you're not number one, but it's basically the same number. So again, if anything, it's going to be more fodder for those guys to try harder.
Sure. And perhaps even more notably, a couple other things just in MPO. Brody Smith cracked the 1,000 rating mark. No surprise. He played certainly well enough at Vegas, getting 25th, cashing. That was basically going to happen. And it's, it is worth reflecting that this is somebody who did not play disc golf more than, 14 months ago. Just did not play. Had once tried it or something, but basically was a complete beginner, total noob, and has gone from 0 to 1,000. I mean, about as fast as you really could do it, I think. I don't know how, I'm sure that statistically out there, somebody has done it faster because they were a good player and then entered a PDGA event. Jackie Chen, for example, from last,
exactly. I was
last
just
winter.
mention, yeah.
But if you talk about somebody who's literally never played and starts out and then is at 1,000 rated 1 year later, I don't think I've ever seen that. So, you've been in the sport a long time. Have you seen a rise of this magnitude, of this speed?
Not that I recall, no. I mean, this is certainly remarkable. And I think I mentioned it last week. I watched the lead or the card that he was on that was had post-production, and he looked like he belonged there. He looked great. His form is good. His power is amazing. His putting, it's just, he belonged in that card with Eagle. And I think that he's going to continue to improve, and I'm not going to be surprised if he has a top 10 finish at the Disc Golf Pro Tour this year.
I think that's a fair assessment. Also, Paige Pierce again set the new record for the highest FPO rating of all time. She's now at 996, 4 points shy of 1,000. And of course, everybody wants to know, is she going to get there? This next month may decide it. In my mind, there's too many events this year where Paige won't have the ability to just go out there and have that massive distance advantage, where, the course is open enough that she can really push way ahead of the competition. Like we saw at Vegas, like we see on the big open bomber courses this next month, and especially WACO coming up this weekend, absolutely critical if she's going to make that push, if it's going to be this year, because, she's going to have to average above 1,000, obviously, for the next probably month or two in order to make it to that point. And as more tournaments get played, it dilutes the overall numbers from last year, where she had such a strong year and so many rounds over 1,000. And so I think it's, I haven't done a deep dive into the math, but I do think that if it's going to be soon, as in this year, she's going to have to play some inspired golf for the next 6 weeks. And I think if she can do it, it's possible.
I actually think it's a foregone conclusion that she'll reach it.
This year?
I'm not going to commit on that, but I'm not going to be surprised. Okay. So she is so close. And so you mentioned WACO. Traditionally, she hasn't played her best at WACO, so maybe she'll have some rounds that pull her down a little bit. But there's so many rounds that she has in her calculation that it's not going to make a major difference. And as more women come out on tour, as some of these divisions have 40 plus women, close to 50 women. Well, there's a pretty big difference between the top women and the bottom women. As we get more women that are playing that are on the bottom side, if they're playing championship courses for the first time and they're struggling, that's just more points for Paige to rack up. So I really think that there's no way that she won't hit 1,000.
I mean, I agree with you in the long run, assuming that she continues to play at this level for the next 5 years. I think with the overall growth of the division and the general inflation of ratings over time, I think she will get there. The real question for me is, is it going to be this year? And obviously she's so close, but those last 4 points are going to be a doozy. In Vegas, she averaged 993. So, and still played extremely well. Maybe not quite the level of dominance that you sometimes see where she wins by 10 strokes.
She played great, but she left a lot out there too.
She did leave a lot out there. So if again, the next 2-3 events, you got this Texas swing, courses she knows well. It's where she's from. I think if she can put down some great numbers, it could happen in the next update. It's not out of the question.
Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say next update. But now that I've been thinking about it a little bit, if I had to put money on it, I do think she's going to break it this year. I just don't think it's going to be in the next month or two. I think it's going to be later in the year. But yeah, it feels like her trajectory is going to take her over that line this year.
She certainly had a lot of good events. I'm trying to look back to see like what's going to start dropping off. Like last year's Memorial is about to drop off, where she, in one of the rounds, shot a 1057 rated round. And like losing some of those really, really high rated rounds is going to start to put some downward pressure. But hey, if anybody can do it, it's Paige. And she is obviously going to have additional motivation compared to a normal year, given that she's as close as she is. So I can't wait to see what happens. But
well, I know it's one of her goals to reach 1,000, but I don't think she goes in the course thinking every shot, okay, I need to make the shot because I need to make 1,000 rated. I mean, I don't think that's probably part of the mindset. So, it's just one of those things that comes along for the ride with the tremendous play that she does anyway. So it's definitely interesting to look at the math and to think about. And I know that she is striving for it, but I don't think she goes to sleep at night trying to calculate how to get there.
If it was ever going to happen, it would be this week. Like, I must bounce back at WACO compared to years past. Katrina Allen is your second highest rated player in the world, 30 points back of Pierce, which just goes to show you how amazing Paige has been playing over the last 12 months. Then Haley King, now in third overall at 965. I'm sorry, Evelina Salonen is also at 966. But hasn't played yet this year. So like if you search in the 2021 ratings, you won't see Evelina there. And let's see. Then you've also got Henna Blomroos at 966. So you've got three players there at 966. And then Haley King at 965. Of course, can't wait to see the European women back at these highly competitive events. Hopefully it happens this summer. We've got U.S. Women's coming up in May, Worlds in June, European Open in July. Still a lot of question marks about travel restrictions, but it's too bad that we're not being able to see some of this competition happening between these, the other top players in the world, like 3 of the top 5 players, just unable to compete because of COVID right now.
Yeah, I hope that we don't have to have an asterisk by any of these championships because they weren't able to attend.
Agreed. All right, so let's get to some other news. And of course, we're going to preview WACO in a little bit. We've got our picks in as well. So the Disc Golf Pro Tour has announced a new match play tournament. We've got an article up on the Ultiworld Disc Golf website about this if you want to check out all of the details. But in September, it's going to be 16th through 19th of September in Pennsylvania. There's going to be a match play championship. And it will be for the top 16 MPO players, top 8 FPO players. And likely going to be bracket style competition, head-to-head match play. And it's going to be at the at this kind of a country club, also like a wedding venue. There's a golf course there. It's called the Steel Club. A couple years ago, they put in a disc golf course. Apparently, it's a nice course. It's got a 4.4 star rating on UDisc. And it's going to get fully redesigned by Steve Brinster and Simon Lizotte to get it ready for this match play tournament, which the qualifiers will be based on the Disc Golf Pro Tour points positioning after the Jonesboro Open. So another sort of, you've got to be in that top group, kind of like the All-Star Weekend or the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship. And this will be a match play event. and notably sponsored by Discmania, who for the first time is going to be sponsoring kind of like a major U.S. event. For the most part, they've focused on operations in Europe, where they're headquartered, but this is kind of a push into the U.S. and working with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Also, perhaps notable because UC Maresma, the owner and founder of Discmania, ran the Disc Golf World Tour a few years ago, which was a direct competitor to the Pro Tour. So that ship has sailed, I think it's fair to say. And we've got this new match play event. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense to build events that encourage the top players or people who are close to the top to want to play every event up to that in order to try to qualify for this championship. So I think that we will perhaps see some of the women that might be on the border, like maybe Holly Finley or Own, make sure that they hit every single Disc Golf Pro Tour event in hopes that they can get into this event, because it's so much coverage for them. If it sounds like they're going to try to have this on the network's TV again.
That's right.
So yeah, I think that this is another showcase that every player wants to be in.
Yeah. And we've seen bits and pieces of match play on the kind of what we would call the tour in the past. I mean, you've obviously got President's Cup, the USA versus Europe event, which has an element of match play. There's occasionally like little fun match play events here and there. The Champions Cup, the new PDGA fourth major that's going to start next year, will include a match play element. But this is the first time that we're really going to see the absolute top elite players playing head-to-head match play. And when we were talking on the show about the Champions Cup a few weeks ago, it was kind of, at the time it was me and Jamie here on the show where we were talking about, having this hybrid stroke play match play thing like the Champions Cup is going to be, feels a little bit weird. But we were saying, wouldn't it be great if we had just a pure match play event at some point during the season as kind of like a showcase of the format? And well, wish granted, we get this now. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. It should be like, it feels like the right time of year to have something like that too. It's a little bit of a break at the point right before we get into all of the big championship events, USDGC, the new Throw Pink Women's Championship, and the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship that kind of like bookends the season at the end. So we get this kind of like, everybody gets to take a little bit of a break. It's still going to be a competitive event, but probably a chance to showcase personalities a little bit more, because you're going to get that head-to-head style competition.
Right. And, inevitably match play levels the playing field a little bit. So it's possible that your eighth place can knock out your first place, and you end up with, at the end of the week, you have some people that you wouldn't have expected to be on top. So every single match is exciting. Nobody can bank strokes throughout the week. So I think that potentially adds to the drama of the situation, whereas sometimes in championship play, somebody has won it mathematically won it before you even start the last round. And it's hard to find drama in that when it's just a victory lap for the top player.
Right. I think the interesting thing here is that 1 month later, you have the Pro Tour Championship, which isn't match play, but it's kind of like a modified stroke play where you have this aggressive cut. And if you don't finish in the top X, 8 or 4 per round, you get eliminated. Is this a step towards that Pro Tour Championship event becoming a pure stroke play event, more along the lines of what you see at the major championships?
Gosh, I don't know what their thought process is. I like that. So it's interesting. So I still consider it stroke play and other. So if it's not stroke play, it all kind of feels like it fits in the same boat and it's just different. If we had more other, then I think each one of them would start having a personality, and it's like, okay, for match play, I have to have this mindset. For, I don't even know what you call the play that you do at the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championships, where it's top score goes on, but you're not head to head. Sure, you're still playing golf, but each one requires a little bit different strategy in how aggressive you are and how cognizant you are of your opponent's play.
Sure. And I think it's just an interesting contrast there, because it's like almost because of the timing of those events, it's like the culmination of the Pro Tour season is now going to be this match play tournament, and then 1 month later, a unusual, non-standard stroke play tournament. And is that the right conclusion to what is otherwise very sort of vanilla 3 and 4 round stroke play tournaments that sort of fill the season? In my view, this maybe gives them the license to change that Pro Tour Championship event into a more standardized stroke play tournament. And, I think that also sets it up potentially long run to become a major. I mean, maybe not, but the current format, I get why they do it, but it just doesn't feel like it really has the same kind of weight, especially because it comes right after USDGC, which is this very sort of historic stroke play tournament. And I think maybe this is a chance for them to say, okay, we're going to do this more fun, different format at this other event, and then we're going to have a stroke play tournament. But I don't know.
Because the entire season is stroke play, and then we have now we have 2 different other events. It seems peculiar to me that we work all the way up to these culminating championships, and then they do something completely different. Well,
right.
Okay, maybe not completely different, but different. And we haven't done them yet. And it's interesting watching, but I haven't been prepped to watch what I'm being shown at that point. And it wasn't completely fulfilling to me as a spectator. I'm not saying it can't be, and I still looked forward to it, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted out of the event from the coverage.
I have to agree. I've never loved it. It's been a similar format for 5-6 years now, and I've never loved it.
It always feels like an exhibition to
totally
me.
Especially coming after USDGC. It's like you have this big major with all the weight of the history, and then you go to this wacky tournament that comes after. It just has never felt like it has that same level of just the heaviness that you want from a big championship event. And that's despite the fact that they've now juiced the payouts to, I think they've committed to $150,000 in payouts this year, which is amazing. I mean, that alone, no matter what your format is, when there's that kind of money on the line and there's going to be $25,000 for the winner, I mean, that's big time real money. So that's going to make it exciting to see who wins. I don't care whether you just flip a coin every round. But
exactly.
At the end of the day, it can be better in my mind. So I kind of hope that who knows what's going to happen this year, but let's see how this match play event goes. That's going to scratch the itch for me of kind of an alternate style event. And then let's just get that. Let's get the stroke play back. Let's just do a 4-round, big money, big sponsors, television, the whole deal. But I think the Pro Tour has outgrown needing this kind of weird format in order to showcase its top athletes.
I hate to dissuade anybody from trying new things, but gosh, I agree with you. I would love to see the championships be just stroke play.
We'll see what happens. News broke last night. The Paul McBeth Foundation has been established. It's a new nonprofit, obviously launched by Paul McBeth, and it is going to try to bring disc golf to underserved locations with limited or no access to the sport. So McBeth has talked about this for years. I've talked about it on the phone and in interviews with him for many years. He's hinted at doing something like this, and now it's happening. Press release went out yesterday, a video as well. There's a website up, paulmcbethfoundation.com. And the goal is to try to, put disc golf courses or portable baskets into places where disc golf doesn't currently exist. So there've obviously been other organizations like this in disc golf that do this kind of charitable work of trying to establish disc golf in more places. Having talked to Paul about this in the past, and by the way, they've raised over $1,300 since the announcement last night, at about, I don't know, I think I saw it at like 7 o'clock Eastern time. So it's been less than 24 hours. He said he was kind of adamant. He didn't want it to be affiliated with a religious organization in any way. And he also wanted it to be manufacturer specific, that it wasn't associated with a particular brand. And when you look at what they've done and the team that they've put together, the folks on the board, the co-chairs of the board are Nate Heinold and Doug Bjerkes. Bjerkes works at Dynamic Discs. Nate Heinold is tournament director. It's heavily affiliated with Discraft. Also Brandon Hibbard, Justin Alderman, and Paul McBeth on the board. And Alderman works for Innova. So the board composition has sort of been intentionally created to not be manufacturer specific. And the goal is to try to use this to raise money, both from individual donors and corporate donors, to push disc golf into new places. With Paul McBeth as the marketing vehicle, all we've seen Paul McBeth do in his career is be a tremendous marketer. So I think that this has huge potential to do big things and continue to help hashtag grow the sport.
I saw the announcement yesterday and it just really felt big, like almost on the level of his $10 million contract. I mean, it really feels like this is real. We're here. We're solid. We're now we have the top players in the sport giving back in a really substantial manner, and I'm just thrilled to see that this is happening, and very impressed with Paul for making it so.
It's amazing. It's honestly amazing. If this achieves what it sets out to, it could be another just huge step forward. Because as much as disc golf has grown, and we've talked about it almost ad nauseum over the last 6 to 8 months, the growth is largely confined to the places where it already exists in a big way. United States, certain countries in Europe, Canada, and a little bit in Japan and a couple of other Asian countries. And Australia and New Zealand, by the way, have healthy, thriving scenes. But there's a lot of places in the world that just don't even have a disc golf course. And it's just maybe getting off the ground. I got an email from somebody from Colombia about 3 weeks ago, and it's like they're just learning about it. It just got a course. There's like, 5 people in their disc golf organization. So that's just one example. And I think there's enormous potential for the sport to grow in new places and in new countries, and having an organization that is focused on bringing money to install courses or baskets or whatever, give resources to these countries or these organizations. That's huge. That's absolutely huge, because The PDGA obviously plays a really important role in the international development of the sport, but they can't necessarily, focus a ton of their funding towards this. This organization is, in theory, going to be able to raise money specifically for that purpose, and with this like single focus of making that happen. And I just think that's a huge thing. So kudos to Paul for setting it up, and it looks so professional. It's all just really well done so far.
I'm going to guess that there's going to be ripple effects from this for decades, and I'm hoping that others fall in line and do similar things. I mean, there's no limit on how many people can give back to the sport, and Paul's setting a great example, and it's going to be a wonderful benefit to everybody involved.
100%. So you can check out more at the Paul McBeth, just www.paulmcbethfoundation.com. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time to ask Juliana. So we've got your questions, and we'll ask them next. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. You got to check out their custom programs. Next one opens up April 1st, 12 p.m. Pacific time. Double the available bags custom made, so you can design exactly the bag of your dreams. Colors you want, the zipper colors you want, every element of the bag customizable. And don't forget, they've got limited edition Octothorpes dropping every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. New colors every week. So go get a Pound bag. You'll never need another one again, guaranteed for life. Check it all out at pounddiscgolf.com. Welcome back to the Upshot. Don't forget, we're now on YouTube, so check it out over on the Old World Disc Golf YouTube channel. And it's now a chance to ask Juliana anything. So we've collected questions from subscribers and listeners, and we're going to put you on the hot seat. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Juliana has not seen these questions in advance, so I'm just throwing them at her right now in real time. So let's start with this. This is from WAC. I'll phrase it better. What do you see as the shot shapes and stances that are overlooked by top golfers in the FPO and MPO divisions right now?
Gosh. Overlooked. Well, first of all, you're asking somebody who only has a backhand. I don't have a sidearm beyond 100 feet out. So my own game is overlooking a critical part. I am a big proponent of using all available resources. So if you're behind some kind of an obstruction, leaning out one side or the other, which obviously if you have a sidearm allows you to get around it that way. But for me, I don't. So the behind the back shot that regrettably is called patent pending now. I love that shot. It is an incredibly valuable shot. And thankfully, I do see a fair number of women using that shot. I don't have a list of different ways to address. So this is a little bit tangential, but one mistake that I sometimes see people doing, and I don't know that I see this at the top level, but if a tee pad faces a particular direction, most people run up in the direction of that tee pad. And that is sometimes very drastically different than the ideal run up for the shape of the shot that you want. So for example, one should not be scared to run up at a 45-degree angle and just get up on that tee pad for the last step. Don't feel like you need to follow the direction that it puts you on, which is why at Fountain Hills this last weekend, I just love those circle tee pads because it doesn't dictate anything, and it allows your mind to determine the best run-up position for the shot.
As somebody who likes to avoid stepping on sidewalk cracks and things like that, I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, I want to stay parallel to the tee pad, even though there's really no reason to do that. Okay, this one from Jackson. What changes at the national or local levels would you support to encourage more women to start playing? This has been a hot topic.
One thing that is currently being done that I am a proponent of is saving spots for women players. Otherwise, just the fact that 93% of the PDGA membership are men, and you open up a tournament and it would be full instantly, and not very many women would get in. So I definitely think that is necessary, and thankful to tournament directors for doing that. What the organization can do to bring more women to the sport, this has been the $1 million question since I've been playing, and nobody's found the answer yet. Things are a lot better than they used to be. One of the simple ones is have bathrooms on a course for women.
Right.
That was more often not the case than it was 25 years ago playing tournaments. But I don't have anything remarkable other than the normal get children involved, so that they know that it's something that's available to them. If we get young girls playing, then they'll know that it's there when they are young women. I don't know. I mean, I see locally, I see a lot of women playing at the recreational level. Not that their play is recreational. I just mean that we're going out recreationally and we're not playing a tournament.
Sure.
I see a lot more than 7% of the people on the course being women.
Mm-hmm.
So that's encouraging. For some reason, it doesn't seem like they then sign up for the PDGA as much as men, but at some point there is a little biology involved, and men do tend to be more competitive than women do by nature. So fighting a little bit of evolution there, but it seems like we're doing what we can, and it just needs exposure, which we're getting in spades right now. So hopefully we just have to wait until those young kids grow into the players that we want.
Sure. And I think you're seeing some places outside the United States doing a really good job with this. I mean, I don't have the demographic data at my fingertips, but like Finland seems like a place where like there's just so much overall disc golf happening that there's just naturally more women playing as a percentage of the total than in the US. So
and I think
something to think about, like who's doing it well and what can we learn from them?
Right. I think that's part of the fact that every child grows up knowing that it exists, and that there's a course right next to the house, and it's accessibility and knowledge that it's there.
There have been a few questions. I'll kind of aggregate them here. What's a good way to learn freestyle if you don't really know anybody that's a freestyler? And then, has freestyle helped your disc golf game in any way? And maybe extending that to just general other disc disciplines.
Okay. Good way. Well, thankfully, there are lots of videos online now with people freestyling, and freestyle.org, I believe, is the FPA's website, and they have a lot of moves where it's just one move, shows the person doing the move, shows it in slow motion. But the way that I started, I'm not saying this is the best way, but it's just the way I started, was you get a freestyle disc, you self-set to yourself, either clock or counter, whichever feels right to you, put, one hand on each side of the disc, spin it, try to put your finger in the middle. And by the way, you can probably even see, I always have acrylic nails on these two fingers. Just these two fingers, super, super heavy duty, so that I don't have to glue nails onto my fingers. I can play with them. I just played last weekend with my acrylic nails. They don't hurt anything. So this allows less friction underneath the disc. For me, learning the nail delay, the center nail delay, was the first step. That's not the way that everybody learns. I did this by I would just work on my own by myself. Mm-hmm. And actually, I can tell you a funny little story. I had just won my second or my third PDJ world title, and I went back home, lived in the Des Moines area in Iowa, and I volunteered to spot for an amateur event. And at this time, I was really trying to learn the nail delay. So I had the Sky Styler with me. I would set it. I'd try to delay it. And if I was lucky, I would get a delay for like a second. But usually it would be all wobbly and it would just fall off. So, I looked like somebody who didn't know what they were doing. And the course wasn't completely full. I was on the longest hole, so I had a lot of spare time. And at one point, I didn't notice the guys at the tee, and so they saw me trying to do this 2 or 3 times. And then as they're walking by, one of the guys asked if I play disc golf too. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, don't worry, keep practicing. Maybe someday you'll get to play a tournament too. And, I just thanked him and they walked on. But no, I actually found it endearing. So anyway, it doesn't matter what your skill level is somewhere else. You always have to start at the beginning and work on the basics. And there's no shame in not knowing how to do something and putting in the effort. So maybe a way to learn, which is slightly more enjoyable, is find a partner, play catch. You're playing catch sure. with the Sky Styler, or you could use an ultimate disc. Then try trick catches behind the back, under the leg, behind the head. It's coming in and automatically roll it instead of catching it. This is probably the more natural way, kind of simulates how freestyle began in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, there wasn't a nail delay. It was just trick catches, trick throws. So
people having fun with a Frisbee.
Yeah, use your imagination. Go somewhere that has a predominantly strong wind and throw the disc up and brush it back into the wind and let it come back to you and brush it again and try to do a trick catch off of the disc or off of the wind as it's coming back to you. I mean, that's another way to practice by yourself. But whatever is fun, whatever you see somebody else doing that really sparks something in you, work towards it.
People should definitely follow you on Instagram, where you do lots of freestyle and people can maybe pick up ideas.
If you go back a few years, you'll see much more elementary stuff that I was working on. I was not afraid to show the things that at the time were hard for me, and I had just finally mastered, and you can really see my growth in freestyle by following me through the years on Instagram.
And the follow-up is, has it informed your disc golf game at all?
So my disc golf game was pretty advanced already.
Right.
I don't think that it has informed or changed, but it has confirmed things. And it's actually the other way around. Because of my disc golf knowledge, I can see things in freestyle that maybe have taken other people a little bit longer. And now, just because I see it doesn't mean I can do it. Very far from the case. But one of the things that just intrigues me so much is what's called a cuff in freestyle. So if the disc is at a pretty good angle, it's hard to do things. So you can bring your hand underneath and cuff it and put it back to a flat angle. And now it's easier to work with. Well, at least for me, it's easier to work with because I like the center delay stuff. And if it's flat, you can't do a center delay. You have to be on the rim. So, I mean, this is the parallels between, if you throw a tee shot and you have that nose up, you're never going to get your best distance. You want to have it flat. And so, sometimes I have even seen a disc golf shot and I was like, gosh darn it. And I want to cuff the back end of that shot because, I didn't get the right angle. So it just opens up different aspects of the game that you now see from a different light.
Got it. All right. This one comes from H Highlighter on Instagram. What advice would you give to your pre-World Championship self? I know we got to go back a little bit to think about that.
My first world title was an AM world title in 95. And then my first world title was in 98. And I think I just would be encouraging. I might have suffered a little bit from not having enough confidence. I kind of needed to succeed before I knew I could succeed. And then once I saw the success, then I could take that forward and build on that. But the very first one, I'm just not quite sure. So I think I just say, it's okay. You can do this. Just let it happen.
Nice. All right. This one comes from Jeff Ruins Everything. How did you come up with the best AVR, the JK AVR?
So when I switched over to Innova, one of the very first things I did was go to the factory on the West Coast, and I'm walking through the factory with Dave Donapace, and he's pulling discs off the shelf and he's putting them in my hands. So you're going to use this, and you're going to use this, and you're going to use this, and you're going to putt with this. And he hands me an AVR, and I feel it, and I hand it back. She's like, "No, I'm not." And I was used to really soft plastic. Prior to switching to Innova, I played for Discraft, and I threw the soft magnet. Well, the soft magnet is very drastically different than, a DX AVR. So I handed it back, and he's like, "What do you mean you're not going to putt with this? This is one of our best selling discs. Of course you're going to putt with it." Like, it's just feels slippery. I don't like the feel of it. So he didn't say anything more about it. And a week later, I got a box of about 6 white discs, and they said JK test on them. And he said, "Let me know what you think of these." And they were just gorgeous. They were so soft, and they felt perfect. And even better, the way that they threw. I didn't have a basket when I got them, so I wasn't putting with them. I was actually throwing them, and I loved them. And I instantly said, yes, 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 this is what I want. Please make this. And, thankfully they put my name on it, and I'm very proud of the disc, and I'm very happy that it's in production.
Awesome. Still your putter today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Does anybody on tour today remind you of yourself in your game, or I guess, yeah.
I wish that my game at some point would have been more Paige-like. Paige is very aggressive. I was not. I was quite conservative. I almost never threw 100%. And I threw shots that I knew that I could make. I didn't throw the fringe shots. And I'm so incredibly impressed with Paige's ability to go for it. So unfortunately, Paige is not somebody who makes me think of my old game. I hesitate to say who I'm thinking of because I don't know, makes me sound like I think I'm all that, but the way that Paul works is the way that I tried to work. So the way that Paul puts in the time and goes to the field and takes it very seriously, is very regimented, very determined, and I don't know, follows a plan. That's the way that I think of what I did. Whether it was actually what I did or not, I don't know. But that's I love how he discusses how he works towards his season. And that's what I tried to do.
In 1999, Jesse Weiss, one of contributors to Ultra World Disc Golf, has been doing a project kind of looking back and trying to establish rankings and going back into the history of disc golf. And he sent me a screenshot of your tournaments in 99, and you literally won everything.
But one.
So which did you not win? Because it's not on my list.
Browns and Bows, B tier, midweek.
Oh no. Oh no. Do you think about that tournament sometimes?
Yes.
Do you have a dream about how you should have won it?
Well, so there are extenuating circumstances, and I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses, but but here goes. So this was part of what they call it. It was Motherlode, Browns and Bows, and Masters Cup in like 10-day period. And this was the midweek event. And I was traveling with a young disc golfer from the Sacramento area. And so I gave her a ride up to Browns and Bows. And Saturday, it wasn't a Saturday because this was probably a Tuesday, Wednesday event. So Tuesday night after the first round, I'm in bed by 10 p.m. and I was awakened by her at 12 o'clock, and she said she locked the keys in the car. This is out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, no.
Well, I had AAA, so that's not a problem, but it was going to take them hours to get there. And not only was it going to take them hours to get there, but, there's no GPS, so to find it was difficult. So I get up, I call AAA, I walk out to the driveway of this property, and I stand there. Thankfully, sorry, I can't remember the name of the NorCal administrative guy who stood there with me the whole time. But anyway, I'm out there for about 3 hours waiting for AAA to come to get us back into the vehicle. And so I didn't have the best night of sleep and a little bit of anxiety and everything. And I believe I only lost by 1 or 2 strokes to Elaine King the next day on that B tier. And I still look back at the 99 season and think, almost had a good season.
Literally won everything else. Here's a question from Fitch. What do you remember the most, speaking of 99, about your first trip to St. Thomas, Ontario for the Flats Classic? And in a perfect world, when can they expect you back in Canada?
Oh gosh. Well, you run an overall event and I'm there, I promise.
All right.
So now I don't know if this was the very first year, but what I remember about playing in the Canadian events, was her name Laura Smith? There was a young girl who was really very solid and really fun to play with. And she didn't travel a lot because I think she was still in high school. And she is what I remember about playing in that tournament.
There you go. Must have been good.
She was very good.
Made an impression. All right. I think I have 1 or 2 more. What's something in professional disc golf today that you wish you had access to when you were touring? This is from Jogan.
Well, quite frankly, the money.
Good answer.
I like you said, I won every single event but one, and I still didn't make $10,000 that year.
Wow.
And sure, that was before I was with Innova. So, I might have had a couple of entry fees paid for, but that's about it. So it was for the love, that's for sure. It wasn't because this was going to be a profession. This was going to be my ticket into whatever. It was for the experience, for the social growth. And it would have been easier with some of the resources that are available. But on the other hand, I'm not sure if I would have done it if it was as visible then, if players were as visible then as they are now, because that might have been too scary for me.
Interesting. What's something that has gone away from the pro game since you were competitively on tour that you think would be a good thing to bring back?
You say half of these questions and I have an answer in my head, and then you say the second half, I'm like, oh, I don't know if you should bring it back. So one thing that I loved was the very first round of every event, because we often mixed divisions. So I got to play with one of the open guys, one of the masters guys. I got to see different games, different strengths, different styles. And that very much helped me grow my game. I wasn't necessarily going to go out and ask the top players to play a practice round with me, but I would get the opportunity to play with them in this format during the round. And that was awesome. And that isn't done at all anymore. And I don't know that it should be. It probably shouldn't be. But boy, I loved that part of it.
And this one from Wyatt, maybe we'll make this the last one. In general, putting percentages in FPO are lower than an MPO. Why do you think that is? And is there like a skill separation issue that you think needs to get narrowed in order for those to come towards parity?
I think you can make the argument that there is a difference, that strength makes a difference when you're talking about, Circle 2, at least the outside of Circle 2, or even beyond Circle 2.
Sure.
But not inside of Circle 1. Maybe then you argue that because there are the women's fields are so much smaller that we just don't have the top skilled people. I don't know how to say this. If we had 300 women playing in a tournament, maybe we would then have the top putters at that event putting at the same percentage as the top in the men's division.
Yeah. It's like you hear sometimes, is the world's greatest chess player never played chess?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But so I'm thinking about basketball, and I think that actually, I don't know that this is true, but I think it's true that the women's free throw percentage is actually higher than the men's free throw percentage. And it kind of feels like inside the circle that there's no reason why the women can't have the same skill level as the guys. I haven't cracked this nut I don't know why there's a big difference here.
You are right, by the way. I just Googled it. The WNBA players do shoot a higher percentage, but they also use a smaller ball. So that has to be accounted for in the way you think about it, I guess. But obviously in disc golf, everybody sort of uses the same equipment. But okay, yeah, great. Well, this has been fantastic. So thank you for all your thoughts. But one more quick one from Scott. What you have a take on limiting disc speeds for top tier events, like not letting players use discs over speed, say 10 or 11?
So I think it's kind of comical. Maybe the course dictates slower speeds because of dangerous interactions with pedestrians in the park. I don't know. I once knew a little old man who loved basketball, but he didn't think it was fair that anybody over 6 feet tall could play. So I mean, it kind of sounds like the same thing, you know. I think I actually enjoy events where something is controlled and dictated. There used to be a tournament in Minnesota, they might still run it, the Moyer Mystery Madness. And you would go to that event and the tournament director would give you an object, and that was the object that you would play with. It might have been an ice cream lid, like a 5-gallon ice cream container lid, or a Humphrey Flyer, like a 99-cent Frisbee that you get at the gas station.
Those are just instant flips.
It was hilarious because, you know, nobody had ever thrown it before. And to try to see who had the ability to learn whatever the tool was that you had to throw. That's fun. But I don't know why high-speed discs are any better or worse. You know, sometimes people play better when they throw lower speeds because they don't have the arm speed for a fast disc, or they don't have the right angles for a fast disc. Mm-hmm. But I'm not anti-fast speed disc. I'm not sure.
You know what? There's trade-offs, as you're getting at. It's not like you see a lot of pros playing with speed 14 discs.
Well, I have always been a person that will try to throw the slowest disc that I can get there. You know, if I think I can get my putter there, you bet I'm throwing my putter. Absolutely, because there's going to be fewer errors. Right.
I mean, and that's great general advice for new players. Like, if you don't need to throw your driver, don't throw it. All right. Well, this is that's the end of our hashtag Ask Juliana segment. So thank you for sending in all of your questions. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking WACO and we're making our picks for this weekend. So stay with us. It's the Upshot. Looking to upgrade your retail disc buying experience? Go to discgolfamerica.com. They've got a clean, easy-to-use website, 5% back on discs, $3.95 flat rate shipping with free shipping on orders over $39. You need an ESP buzz? They got them. And you know what? Discs go out no later than the next business day. You get a tracking number, the whole deal. It's a great experience, and it's a veteran-owned business. So check it out, discgolfamerica.com. Use code UPSHOT to get an extra 10% off. You can't beat the deals at discgolfamerica.com. Welcome back to the Upshot. The WACO Annual Charity Open is coming up this weekend down in Texas, Brazos Park East, as we get the the Texas swing, if you want to call it that, started this weekend. National Tour coming up soon as well, but this is on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Tournament begins on Friday. All of the rounds will be at Brazos Park East, and let's just take a moment to remember, 1 year ago, the pandemic began, and it was during the middle of this tournament when everything was going down. I remember calling Jeff Spring after the first round because it was the NBA had just announced that it was canceling the rest of its season, and like all of the dominoes started falling across sports. March Madness got canceled. NHL, everything was happening. And I called Jeff and I was like, are you going to continue playing this disc golf tournament? And it was I don't think they knew at that moment when I called at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. And then by the morning, it was, we're making this the final round. And they played that second round as the final round on Saturday. And that was it. And then, disc golf shut down for 3 months, basically. And there was so much uncertainty about what the rest of the year was going to look like. And, all of these sanctioned tournaments got canceled. But it's crazy to think back that it's now been a year. It feels like longer than a year, I'll be honest. But we come back to this tournament where Colton Montgomery got the huge shock win, and we resume, and obviously things have gone quite well for disc golf as a sport and for the Pro Tour since then. But this is the milestone event.
Yeah, I've heard a few of the players talk about how strange that final round was, because their entire year was in question. And as some of them, as new adults, had never really faced such an existential crisis and such large questions of what does my world look like, but what does the world look like and where are we headed? So I'm sure some of those questions are still lingering in people's minds as they go back to the location that they were at when this first was announced last year.
It's crazy. I mean, I remember I'd been in an Ultimate Frisbee tournament the weekend prior, and I remember feeling weird about it. It was out in San Francisco. I remember going to the airport and being like, I probably shouldn't be going to this tournament right now. And I was also scheduled to go to Switzerland for a ski vacation. And the day I was supposed to fly, the night before, the Trump administration announced the ban on European travel. And so I still remember, and then I remember that, when the NBA had the Rudy Gobert had a positive test, and then it was the game was canceled, and then a bunch of other games were canceled, and then the season was shut down. I just remember it was just an absolutely insane 48 hours of trying to see what is the impact of this going to be on disc sports, and of course our lives. Do you remember where you were or what you were doing when this? I don't know what hit home for you, whether it was lockdown or the NBA news or whatever.
The NBA news is the one that hit me the strongest.
Me too.
And I'm where I am right now. I'm in front of my computer, and it just didn't expect such a big entity to take such actions so quickly. And it really hit home at how serious this was and how it's going to impact everybody.
Yeah.
And we don't yet know what that impact will be.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the PDGA canceled Elite Series events, but they were still letting regular tournaments happen for a couple days, and then they canceled everything. Just wild. And I mean, it's worth pointing out that in FPO, Evelina Salonen and Henna Blomroos were at the top of the leaderboard when this all ended. And that's the last time that they've played at a US event since the pandemic.
Right.
So, an unusual event in many ways, because it ends up getting shortened midstream. I think they ended up barring spectators the second day, if I remember correctly. And you get this remarkable final round from Colton Montgomery, who, wins his first Elite Series event, and the, famous pictures of him spraying champagne. And, Evelyn Salonen wins an FPO. It's hard not to think about this event in those terms because of just like what everybody's lives have been like. And it's funny, if professional disc golfers are listening to this, they're probably like, well, in my life, maybe it didn't change that much. I still live on the road in my van.
And one could argue that disc golf has benefited greatly from
100%
the pandemic.
How can you say that it hasn't? I think disc golf had tailwinds anyway, but clearly everybody being stuck in one place and really being encouraged to do things outdoors and not being able to do many of the normal things that they do has had an enormous impact on disc golf success and in its growth path over the last 12 months, no question. Anyway, that is all to say, we're back at WACO, and we come into this event with lots of questions. Is Colton Montgomery going to be able to catch lightning in a bottle again? Can Paige Pierce chase 1,000? She's got a chance. This has not been an event that she's typically played her best at. Is that just a fluke, or is that something that we're going to see again this weekend? Chris Dickerson is playing his first event on tour this year. He skipped the first couple, so he's out there in the field this weekend, coming off of his USDGC win. So that's going to be an exciting thing to keep an eye on. And just tons of storylines as we get out of the desert, and it's still an arid environment, but there's a lot more trees out there at the WACO course than we've seen at Vegas and Memorial.
I think this is going to be drastically different. I looked at the weather forecast, and it looks like they're going to have a wet weekend.
Oh, is that right? I didn't even check the weather.
I think they're going to have some rain and some wind to contend with at this event. So it's not just trees that are going to cause some difficulties.
Oh, wow. You're totally right. It looks like we might see fairly significant wind up to 20 miles per hour around midday on Friday and Saturday. A little bit lighter wind, but rain potentially all 3 days. So lots of different things out there. You have thoughts? I know you've played at this Brazos Park East course, years ago now. Thoughts on what this course demands, both from having played it and then watched it on the coverage over the years.
It has been at least 15 years since I've played this event, and the course has changed drastically. Some of the holes out by the water, I absolutely recognize the terrain and the pin placements, but a lot of the tighter holes in the woods, I don't. And maybe it's because I blocked them out because they were tough and I didn't want to remember how I threw on them. But I like the fact that this course offers both the more traditional park holes and then the really wooded holes. Mm-hmm. And it, as you mentioned, this is not a course that Paige has traditionally done really well on. So the wooded holes, it's hard to be aggressive and to keep your perfect line on some of those shots. And I think that's why she has gotten into trouble in the past. And it is always really interesting to watch on holes that demand such a precise line.
Yeah. And it's just such a different kind of golf than what we saw to start the year. So I
think some of the players that have both backhand and forehand have an advantage on these holes, because then you can, whichever is more natural. Sarah Hokum always does really well with wooded courses. She's got a very good line. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this tournament, we seem to see Sarah up at the top quite a bit. And so far we haven't seen Paige there as often.
Yeah. Last year, if you take Evelyn and Henna out of the mix, since they won't be there this year, it was Sarah Hokum and Katrina Allen tied at 5 over par through 2 rounds up there and tied in third place. Kona Star Panis was tied for 5th with Rebecca Cox and Heather Young. So that's another one to keep an eye on. Do some of these players who, obviously we saw Kona have a great showing at the All-Star Weekend. Now that distance won't be quite as heavily emphasized out at the at this WACO course, do we see that translate and see her get a win on the Elite Series?
I think you're underselling Kona's distance.
That's a fair
Kona's
point.
got good distance.
If anything, it's the putting that Kona needs to shape up.
I think Kona has everything she needs to do well here. She had if I remember correctly, she had one really good round last year and then followed it up with maybe not such a great round. So yeah, I think that she has the tools. She's got both sidearm and the backhand. And if she's got a good line, and if that Anheuser putt of hers is working, she could find herself on the lead card quite easily.
Paige Pierce finished in 13th place at 9 over. She played much better in the second round than the first, for whatever that's worth. So we'll see what happens this year. And I think a chance now for us to make our picks. So I think I made you go first last time, so I'll kick us off and I'll start us off in FPO. I do have Paige Pierce in my top 3, but I don't have her at the top of my picks. In third place, I have Haley King, who's been playing better and better. I feel like we're seeing Haley get the rhythm going. She had a very good final round at the Memorial, and it seemed like she's needed a little bit of warm up. Her earlier rounds in tournaments so far haven't been quite as good as her final rounds. So once she's, kind of knocked the rust off of the winter, I think this is a chance for her to go out there and really look sharp. Paige Pierce, I have in second place. I think all the motivation's there for Paige. Get people to stop talking about the fact that she doesn't play here that well. 1,000 rating chase, the whole deal. But in first place, I have Katrina Allen, who I think looked really, really good to start the year. Looked good at the end of last year. The putting has improved. There's no questioning her ability everywhere else on the course. And I just think that this is exactly the kind of place where she can excel. She essentially, if you take the Europeans out, she finished tied for first last year. So there's no reason that she can't do well. And I think she's playing better so far this year than what we saw last year at this time. So Katrina is my pick.
Yeah, I agree with all that you said about Katrina. And I also have Katrina winning this event.
All right.
I'm very impressed by her putting in Las Vegas. And if she has her putting game on, she's going to be very, very hard to beat, especially on a course that requires such a precise line. And she is deadly off the tee. So I think that this tournament is right there for her taking. I have Sarah Hokum in my second position. Again, Sarah's a great wooded player, so I think that she will find less trouble on those wooded holes than some of the other players. And in third, I'm getting on the own train, and I'm hoping that she can ride her Memorial victory to a podium finish.
Hot hand
at this event.
All right, no Paige in the top 3.
No, I know it's not necessarily the wise choice, but give some of these other girls a shout out.
All right, your MPO picks are?
Okay, in MPO, I'm going to start at the bottom, I guess. For my third place, I have Jeremy Colling. He has done well at this event in the past, and I see no reason for him not to do well again this year. So have him in third. Second place, Ricky Wysocki. His game looked excellent in Las Vegas, and I look for him to play well here. And then I just can't vote against Paul. Paul's number 1.
That's fair. I think I have to be honest, if there had been a third round last year, I think he would have won this tournament.
I think so too.
All due respect to Colton, all due respect, but we've just seen so many times if Paul is in the hunt in the final round, he wins. Especially going up against somebody who's never won a big Elite Series event, and it's clockwork. But not to take anything away from Colton, I just think that Paul is a very smart and safe pick here. coming off the win at Memorial. All right, so in third place, I had James Conrad, but I changed my pick literally right now, last minute. James played here very well last year. I just worry a little bit about how dialed in are his lines with the new bag. I don't really want to put my neck out there and have him struggle a little bit, because I think this is the part of the game that's probably the hardest to adjust. What do I know? It's not like I use one bag and then switch. But having that precise, you need 5 to 10 degree angle control, and you can't make a miss or you're going to hit a tree. I think that's probably going to be a little bit tricky. But I will give the shout out and say that, if he does well, I'm going to take credit, just so everyone's aware of that. But in my third spot, I have Adam Hammes, who I think we talked a little bit about this after Vegas. He played quite well at Vegas, despite the fact that his putter was not going. Like, he was one of the top players off from tee to green when you look at strokes gained at LVC. And that's not necessarily the part of the game that you would say is his strength. So if he regresses to the mean in the putting department, why not Adam Hammes? I mean, he's played really, really well to begin 2021. And I think it's like a little misleading to look at what he did at Vegas and say, more of the same. Because in fact, it was the best part of his game that I don't want to say abandoned him, but wasn't there for him that weekend. So I expect we'll see a nice performance from him out at WACO. In second place, I've got Paul McBeth. I mean, I don't really know what there is to say. He's playing great. And I am going to get a little spicy with my first pick here. I'm going with Eagle McMahon. Now that I know that it's raining, I should probably take Calvin Heimberg after what we saw from him at USDGC last year. But I will stick with it. I am like kind of on the Eagle is going to have a monster year bandwagon right now. And this is an event where he could really make a statement. He did not play especially well here last year. He finished tied for 24th. However, he shot a 10 under in the second round. His final score after 2 rounds was 10 under. So he just had a horrible first round. And then he shot one of the best rounds of the day. Colton shot a 13 down, which was just honestly unbelievable. He had a stretch in the back 9. Colton did. An eagle on 13, birdie 14, eagle 15, birdie 16, birdie 18. It was just crazy. But the next best round was 10 down, and that's what Eagle shot. So it's not like he hasn't been able to go out and score on this course. And I just think that he has a different look about him to start this year. So I'm gonna get on the Eagle train early and often, and pick him to win on a course that isn't necessarily what you would say like plays to his strengths. But the versatility of his game is just unquestioned. And so let's see how he can do in the windy, wet conditions this weekend in Waco. So those are our picks. Lock them in. We're going to have the algorithm is also going to make some picks. Awesome new feature over on the Ultiworld Disc Golf website. I'm gonna have to pull up the names right here. Sam Tauk and Ryan Burns have put together a predictive model for Elite Series events. And they basically took a lot of factors. They ran a regression and they said, okay, what matters? What determines how a player does at an Elite Series event? And you can go on the website and you can read about the model. There's going to be an update for their top 5 picks for Waco. But it is very interesting because what they found so far as they continue to work on the model, but rating is obviously the number one factor. So no surprise there. If you look at long term, what determines whether players place high at a tournament. But here's the thing that they found that was the second most impactful. Distance from home. So the closer players were to their hometown, the better they tended to play. That outweighed weather conditions, wind conditions, and other elements when they ran the regression. So interesting, perhaps a familiarity with courses situation, perhaps a statistical anomaly that has to be worked out. But they did find that, and you can read more about it on the website. Do you think there's any validity to that when you hear it?
Yeah, I actually think that there is a little bit of validity to that. You may have parents, friends, brothers and sisters coming to caddy for you, to watch you, to cheer you on, to inspire you. Certainly the fact that you've probably played the course a number of times, if it's much closer than across the country. So it's not something I would have maybe even thought to put into the algorithm, but once you say it, it makes sense.
It's a finding from other sports that, when players have to travel to play, they tend to play worse. There's a lot of reasons that people think that's true. Time zones, biological clock things, just the fatigue of travel.
Well, even comfort of what you can find to eat in the area.
Sure. I think the interesting thing, from a disc golf perspective, typically as you get further away from where you're from, you're going to get different styles of course. I mean, if you grew up in New England, a certain type of golf. Sure. Are there courses that deviate from that? Yes. But in general, the kinds of courses that you see in New England are going to be very different from the ones you see in Southern California, which would obviously be about as far away as you could get if you stayed domestically. So anyway, they're going to continue to work on the model, and they did pretty well. The model did pretty well at Las Vegas Challenge, and they called us out. And so I guess we'll probably have to start picking 5 players for our leaderboards in the future to match their 5. But we'll see how our top 3 do against the model picks. So make sure you join us for our subscriber bonus segment. We're going to be taking some mailbag questions from listeners. We've been catching up on the mailbag. We've got some good ones to get to. So you can get access to all of our subscriber bonus segments by going to discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. And you can sign up for less than $4 per month to get not only all of the Upshot bonus episodes, but you get the Cashline business newsletter and exclusive articles, access to the Discord server, and a whole lot more. So check it out. Juliana, this has been fantastic. I want to have you back as a guest and come on the show anytime you want. So please reach out. And I just want to say thanks again for agreeing to join me for these few weeks.
You're very welcome. Thanks for thinking of me.
All right, that is going to do it for this week's edition of The Upshot. For Juliana Korver, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on the show.